recording. Well, good
Okay.
afternoon, everyone. Glad to have everyone with us on this February for our latest Society of Agricultural Communications Scholars session. This afternoon, we have Lauri Baker with us to talk about managing an extension appointment with a teaching or research or both appointments. From what I kind of gather, it's how to balance things depending on no matter what your appointment happens to be. So after Lauri finishes her discussion, we'll have some time to talk about some other things too, including something that Lisa Lundy and I and Taylor Ruth have kind of put together to kind of continue on these discussions beyond our sessions on Mondays. So with that, Lauri, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you to talk to us about how to do this.
Hey, excellent. Well, I'm glad y'all were able to join today, and just a little brief introduction to myself. I think I know the majority of you, but we also always have new faces joining, which is exciting. So I am Lauri Baker. I'm an associate professor at the University of Florida, and I have a 65% research appointment and a 35% extension appointment. I've also balanced other appointments though. 8 years prior to me being at the University of Florida, I was at Kansas State University, and there I had a 70% teaching appointment and a 30% research appointment. So a little bit different. My plan for today is really to share how I'm working to balance my current appointment, and then to share how I've seen others manage these types of appointments or a portion of an extension appointment with other appointments. And then I really want us to have an open discussion of your strategies and questions you may have for me or for other people that have joined us. I feel like we all get a little tidbit here and there from each person we talk about how we're managing all of this with all of the other life things that we're also managing. So with that, I will kind of get into how I am currently managing this. And I joked with a few people before we got started that when I signed up to do this, at that point, I felt like maybe I was managing it a little better than I feel like I am this current week. So there's ebb and flow, as I'm sure all of you find with managing academic life, is some days we're a little bit better at this than other days. But I feel like when I really first started having an extension appointment, I looked at what my current work was and the things that I did within that work and where I could find a fit for my my offerings in my extension appointment. So many years ago, in a class at the University of Florida, we developed a research program model, and I've kind of gradually built on this as I've grown, and I try to dust it off at least once a year and kind of evaluate the things that I'm doing. And in my current situation, again, I'm 65% research, but when I had a 30% research appointment, I also dusted this off once a year. And at that point, I had a 70% teaching. So it was also a time when I reviewed my teaching philosophy and those kind of things to see if that's where I wanted to be and where the current kind of map for my academic life was. So this is kind of where I started when I started with my extension appointment. Is these are kind of the things that I do, and this is my big goal, and these are the theories that I use and the areas I focus in and the outcomes I'm seeking and the communities that I'm working with. And then I adapted this to really focus on research and extension together as maybe more one program. So I feel like the thing that's helped me work through the management of this is for all of it to fit together. And that'll be kind of the theme of what I talk about related to how I've managed this anyway, is really looking at how it can become one thing instead of these two separate things or these three separate things, depending on where you are in your program. So for me, the main approach of what I'm doing has stayed the same: working in community engaged scholarship, helping those in ag and natural resources. And then my program focus areas have really kind of continued to evolve. And this year when we submitted our annual review documents, I did a little changes. So this is the newly updated one of my program focus areas, really still holding on to that online communication and online selling, which is something I've done for the last 8 to 10 years. But then within the last year, there's been more opportunities and more needs within our industry that kind of fell in that science communication realm. So there were a lot of things I was already doing that I hadn't really framed under that umbrella before. But with the work of the last year, that science communication really kind of stuck out. So my communities, again, are very similar. No, go away. Sorry, small child. Also managing those things right now. Go away. Go away. He learned to unlock my door. That's the recent development over the last 2 weeks. It's been delightful. So my short and medium term outcomes, and as many of you know, no, go away. So sorry. Of course, like left me alone for hours, but now. In extension, there's a lot of additional reporting that I feel like I wasn't prepared for. I ran some programs at Kansas State University that could almost have fallen under an umbrella of an extension program, even though I didn't have an extension appointment at the time. But I didn't do as great of a job measuring those because nobody was asking me to measure those. So the thing that has really been able to help me understand where things fit in this measurement is looking from the very beginning about where I see this going, what outcomes I want for my audiences. And then I'm able to measure those along the way at the end of programs, but also aggregating those at the end of the year when it's annual review time and when I need to put things into the reporting system. So once I kind of established, apparently if he's not crying, he's not going to leave me alone. Once I evaluated what I was good at and where I saw those needs being and what sparked my interest and my passion, then I needed to really find where that missing piece was and where I could fit in to the bigger puzzle of our system. One thing at Kansas State University, there weren't really a lot of people doing what I call extension communication. And so that was a hat that I could wear quite a bit and I could find a place and some partners for. But moving into the University of Florida system, there were people that were doing that kind of work very effectively. There were a lot of extension publications on those topics. Some people on this call have developed those. So that wasn't necessarily a need that I needed to fill here. So I had to kind of take a look and see where were my skills needed and what purpose did I serve here? And some of the online selling and the online communication were still a niche that I could fill and that people in the industry were really asking for. I feel like I was in a kind of different situation than some people, that when I came to the University of Florida, I already kind of had my place because I had a passion. I'd been working with a center previously. So I almost knew a little bit about where I might fit within a system. I have heard of other people who are starting from scratch, who don't necessarily have a reputation yet or know the system, not knowing exactly where they fit. So again, I think if we can look at this as a bigger picture, and figuring out, sorry, these are a little out of order. This is where I want it to go next, is figuring out where we fit in the pyramid. So where that research piece of what you're already doing aligns with your extension work, aligns with your teaching work. So that way we don't have to be an expert in all of the 20,000 million ag communication things. We can really be focused in this orange section here on what we're good at and where we fit. So we can take a look at the bigger landscape of things and say, oh, you know what, this is what I do, and this isn't what I do, but let me help you find somebody else to do that piece. Because I think in ag communication, a lot of times we end up being a jack of all trades and sometimes a master of none if we're not careful and really focus our program on the things that we are best at and that we have time to keep up with current literature on and to continue to work through the processes on. So then I'll go back to this slide because that's where I thought we were at the time. And this is a reminder that I literally am telling myself daily right now is remember to prioritize your major appointment. For me, that's a 65% research appointment right now. And particularly, maybe it's just a time of COVID, but over the last year, all of a sudden, I've been talking about online selling for the last 10, 11 years. And farmers have been like, yeah, that's fine. Maybe someday I'll do a little bit of that. And right now, they're like, hey, I do want to know that. And I want to have you do all these programs. And there are agents within the state that want us to attend their virtual event and help their members with some of those things. And so the number of requests has been a little overwhelming during this time. So I literally have a sticky note on my bunker wall, as I call my office here, that says, what have you done today for your 65%? Because there was certainly a period of a few months there where my days were pretty focused full time on that 35% because people were in front of me asking for things, wanting to know what I could do and how I could help with these different pieces. So again, I think if you let that secondary appointment or third appointment really flow from your major appointment, then it feels a little more manageable, like you're doing one thing because it is that cohesive thing where my research here is at the top for me because that's my major appointment. And then my extension work, I try to always tie back to that research piece. And then as we all know, we don't just have 2 appointments, even if on paper we have 2 appointments. There certainly is a huge element of my work that's teaching, even though I don't have a teaching appointment related to managing graduate students and maybe doing some special topics here and there and mentoring them through these processes. So this is another area where I try. I've seen some other people do even better at this, but really try to work with students who match my 65% research interests. So if they have a component that falls into the science communication aspect, if they have a component that falls into the online and new media or the online selling piece, then I'm more likely to work with them because they will contribute to my research piece and my extension piece. And I know sometimes in smaller departments, you may not have the luxury of making some of those decisions. You may just have to advise them all, but the more that you can try to fit them into what you're doing, the better it will be for your overall program, your mental health, and ultimately for the university and the land grant mission as well. One thing that I think has really been key for me being able to manage anything is finding partners that really complement my work. When I was at Kansas State University, we started the Center for Rural Enterprise Engagement, and that's really an interdisciplinary team working in horticulture, working in ag economics, and I had skills that they didn't have. And they have skills that I don't have. And so because of that, I feel like our events have been able to be more successful. Our research has been able to be more successful because we kind of fill in the gaps. And fortunately, I've been lucky to find a similar partnership at the University of Florida, of course, with the Pi Center, which we're all very familiar with, in finding other people that can help me with that extension appointment, particularly in my case, because it's the smaller portion of my job that I might not have to contribute. Now SpongeBob is too loud. I might not have to contribute at the level that somebody else would if they had a majority extension appointment. I can help review pieces that are directly related to my research. I can help people develop videos on that topic, but I don't have to be the main person driving those pieces. I'm just contributing the part where I am an expert and let them be an expert in the piece that relates to their appointment and to their work. So a few things that I have seen some others do to manage these extension appointments. This very first one here is definitely taken from the Ricky Telg playbook, is to take what you teach and turn that into extension publications. It was not that much long ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago, that he shared, I think he has 30 some extension publications, that essentially he took lectures from his class and typed them up and made them pretty and cohesive and applied them to a non-college student audience and turned them into extension publications within our University of Florida system, which is brilliant, and again kind of fits with that triangle that I showed. In his case, he had at the time, I'm not exactly sure your appointment right now, you can pop in and correct me if I'm wrong, but a major teaching appointment, but he also wanted to be contributing to those extension audiences. I suspect in many cases he was getting requests from extension audiences saying, hey, do you have something to help me develop videos or photographs or writing? And in that case, he was able to translate his lectures into extension publications and help those audiences with what he'd already created for another area. I see the same thing working very well for public presentations. And again, you may be getting those requests, or you may be in a position where you're establishing a new program. And as you're going and talking to stakeholders, there's really no reason for you to reinvent the wheel on this. The things that you're already doing in your teaching are things that would be applicable for those adult extension audiences as well. So kind of sharing with them, these are the things that I do, these are the things I'm teaching in my classroom, this is how it might work into a public presentation, an online presentation, as we're doing a lot of those now, or other outlets for your work. And I think that piece is something I was able to do fairly well at when I was at Kansas State University and did have a major teaching appointment, is we adapted a lot of those materials for our extension audiences because they were having the same challenges, the same needs to represent their industry. In my case, in online communication. In your case, maybe it's crisis communication or something different. This second bullet point, I absolutely have in how I've seen others manage, because this is not my strong suit. And maybe I should add a sticky note around here that says something of who have you said no to today, because I'm not the best at saying no. But the people who I've seen really manage their time well and manage all of these balls well are good at telling people no. And I think all of us in our industry could learn to do that a little bit better. For me, my weakness is typically my students. I joked with one of them that if they said, I could probably really only meet you at 3 a.m., I'd be like, oh, I mean, I could, move some things and make that work. Like, I'm not really doing anything but sleeping at 3 a.m. I don't see why I couldn't do that. Um, whereas a colleague of mine, I have seen her very strategically put students who have requests when she's serving on their committees or she has other roles with them, say, my designated office hours are this time. And if the student said, I can't meet during that time, she was very quick to say, well, I can also meet with you the next week at that time. So I don't think people are offended by that. I think it is good time management techniques. Again, I'm still on a learning curve with this, which is why it's in how I've seen others manage their time, because I'm not great at that no word yet, but we probably all should be working on that as well. Also really keeping a pulse on the needs of your community. This is certainly something I actively try to do and I think about doing. But maybe I'm not doing regular needs assessments and regularly seeing where it fits into the broader landscape, maybe more anecdotally. But I've seen others do a really great job of taking something like my extension and research model that I showed earlier, and doing some regular testing in the state of, does this fit your needs? Where are there other pieces that we could plug in? That might also be a nice way to find other partners that are working in some of those similar areas. And perhaps at the end of this, we may be able to have some conversations of where we can collaborate across states. There's certainly no reason in our current digital times that we have to be creating all of these unique pieces for all of our states, when some of them can certainly translate across the nation, and perhaps even further than across the United States. So I don't think she's on today, but Chris Boone, my former department chair at Kansas State, used to always tell me that teaching will stay on top of you, but you're the one who's going to have to stay on top of research. And I've found that the same is true for an extension appointment. Is you have stakeholders or you have students in front of you asking for things that have real needs and real demands in their lives, and they see you as someone that can help fix these things. And I think we all entered this industry because we wanted to help people and we wanted to try to fix those things for people. But it's not always possible to do that 24 hours a day. And as all of us know, if we don't set some hard boundaries here and there, things will creep in and stay on top of you. So for me, again, that my sign up here of what have you done for your 65% today, it may mean that I'm waking up a little early the next day to make sure I get extra time on that 65%, or I'm reviewing my calendar to rearrange some things where I can have more time for that 65% piece, or working really hard to make sure that the things I'm presenting on, the things I'm developing extension documents on, there's a way for me to document those in the research category as well. And sometimes that can be done with grant work, where we can kind of double dip in some places and find some other partners. Lately, I have tried to do a lot more of giving other people opportunities to present pieces. So as I said, I try to have graduate students who are focused on similar goals as me. And what a great opportunity for them to go and speak to some of these extension audiences, to present at places related to this topic. And Lord knows I've had enough experience with those kinds of things. So if there's a place for them to plug in and be able to do some of the heavy lifting on an extension publication or presentation or publication, then that's a real opportunity for them to learn and grow. And it's less work for me to have to do some of those last minute details or getting things up to the place that they would need to be to present. I certainly trade off that there's time working with them as well. But those are a few of the pieces I've done to try to not be this cockroach being squunched underneath somebody. So as I say here, don't let it crush you. We should be doing the crushers in this situation instead of letting them crush us. But now I wanted to really kind of open it up to everybody to hear, how are you managing things, and what tips and tricks do you have for this time? And then after that, we can follow up with some questions that you have either for me or for other people on this call who are managing things maybe even better.
Great. Any comments or questions for Lauri? Suggestions or tips?
Thanks, Lauri, for being honest and demonstrating what it looks like to juggle multiple things at once. I think one of the things I've noticed is it's a lot easier to say no to things now that I'm tenured, right? And it was a lot harder And it still is hard at times to know what are the best opportunities to say yes to. And I think that these opportunities point out the need to have others that you can go to and say, hey, what do you think? What do you think I should do here? And, you know, or asking others in your life, you know, and sometimes it just becomes a balancing act of, okay, what could I give up to say yes to this? And this past year's been hard for working mothers. I mean, I don't think there's any way around it. And there's been a lot of things that I just can't commit to, and we don't need to feel guilty about it. I mean, it's been tough for everybody, don't get me wrong, but I've been listening to a podcast about the divide that this is causing in equity in the workforce of working parents. And so that was top of mind. So I think one thing to recognize is that if you are working up through tenure and promotion and you feel like you don't know where to focus, ask others, ask your department chair or those who are around you, where should you focus your time? And Lauri, I appreciated your comment about the teaching. When I was hired, I remember probably Dr. Dorfert and Cindy Akers and a few others told me, if you fall behind in teaching, you're never going to get through this. They didn't say it like that, but the attitude was you've got to focus on teaching. And I did have a high teaching appointment. I still do. But you have to, I like that you said like you would schedule time to hit your 65%. I'm like, dang, I have found myself scheduling the time to do the things I keep avoiding, that I just am like, oh, I don't want to do that. I mean, as much as I love to teach, I hate grading. So like I have to schedule grading time or I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. So I feel like I'm rambling a bit, but I will say that if you aren't tenured and promoted yet, then the courage comes with tenure and promotion.
That is a good point. But the other point is pre-tenure, I think it's going to sound like I don't have a good department chair advocate, and that's not true. But I feel like your department chairs will be extremely helpful to you if you're not tenured in saying, hey, I'm struggling here and I need to decide what I can say no to and who I can say no to. Sometimes when you're a little further along, they're like, yeah, it's hard all over. Go ahead and do that. But they want to see you get tenured too. So going to them with help prioritizing can be really valuable. Anybody else have tips for how they're managing? David does. Yay, of course.
I'm gonna go against a little bit of what you just said there, that your department chair will protect you. There's been some history in AgCom discipline, because we're in an ag ed department often, that the chair doesn't always know how to guide an AgCom faculty member. And sometimes that chair has actually left the person alone and let them figure it out on their own, which is not good management. So do not assume your chair is going to protect you. Reach out for those conversations. But if you're not getting them, this is your group. You should be talking to us. And that's why Ricky and others have been leading that mentoring part. So don't rely on the life preserver being tossed at you. Make sure you go out there and find one.
Yeah, that is a very valuable point. And I think I was going to mention, but I forgot in some form of distraction around here, that the SACS mentoring, I think, has been a really nice development in our AgCom industry for that purpose.
Especially for those who are in programs of one or two. It's been kind of, at least in my experience, but my people I'm mentoring, it's been exactly what David said. It's like you've got what we are doing is definitely not the same as what others within the big umbrella of most of our blended departments are doing. So sometimes you need an exterior person to give a vote of to help with bolster the confidence, to say, hey, that's not what I do, and I can't do that because of this, and say it's okay to say no, or at least not now, type of thing. So.
And Lauri, your point about giving others the opportunity also resonated with me. And that's something that I'll admit I still struggle with. Like, I'll just do it myself. Like, it'll take less time than me trying to explain it to someone, but I'm holding back too many opportunities from graduate students or others who, junior faculty who could really benefit from that experience. And so I think it's reframing that from dumping on other people to no, like, I want to support other people to have some of the unique experiences I had that helped me be successful in the role. But I do struggle with that because sometimes I'm like a last minute person, and to do that well, you really need to kind of prep and be able to like say, okay, here are some things I want you to do. Can you come back to me? And so that's one thing that I'm trying to think through and do a little bit better every day.
Yeah, that is a good point. I'm the same way. Like, I feel like if I've waited till I have a presentation tomorrow, well, I obviously can't let somebody have that opportunity. So I'm trying to do better at looking forward in my calendar. I will say, I kind of laughed that after the NACS conference, my graduate students were so happy that they got the chance to present those pieces. We're like literally telling each other, you won't believe what she's going to let me do. Like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious and wonderful. I mean, like they do appreciate those things that to us have become burdens because we've done them so long.
Lauri, I have a question, and for the rest of the group. I'm 70% teaching, 30% extension, kind of almost to the middle, almost to my mid-tenure review. I think I've done a really good job narrowing down my focus. Like, I have a very strong focus with my extension work. And I've gotten a couple of grants. Like, I think I'm in a good place right now to be like, no, I don't want any more things on my plate. I'm struggling to keep up with my own stuff, but I am continuing to get, hey, do you want to be on this grant? Hey, do you want to be on this proposal? And I feel like I just keep saying no. And I know that that's a good thing to learn, but at the same time, I don't want to burn bridges for future opportunities. But I do want to stay in my focus area. So does anyone have any advice in terms of like awesome opportunities that I'm turning down because I don't think I have the capacity, and how that might affect future, like, am I doing what I'm supposed to do, or how do I navigate those conversations?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And I think I would say all of us are probably dealing with that right now. I think some of it comes back to those partners, and is if you can have some partners and people that you're working with, and you can say like, I have 2 grants that are running right now. I can't do it this time. If a year from now you're resubmitting, I still want to be part of the team. There are still ways I could possibly contribute, or possibly lowering your role in the grants. I think we've had some success with putting in money for graduate students or for staff positions. So that way, my role maybe doesn't have to be so hands-on in a grant if somebody else can pick up some of those pieces, so I don't have to say no. But I'll let others share with their strategies on that.
One thing that I've tried to do is, if I just honestly don't feel like I can do it, I'll try to name other people, because sometimes they're just trying to find someone and they've worked with you in the past, or they've heard good things about you and they don't know where else to go. So I think that may be enough to help them feel like you weren't saying no, you're just saying not now to this opportunity, and help them find that better connection.
I'll echo both of those comments and emphasize Lauri's point there on adding grad students in the budget. If it was a project early on in my career where they didn't have enough money for me to get help, I probably turned it down because I was doing too many other things at that time. But if I could get a grad assistant, then I felt I could do it. So part of that is setting your expectations. I'd love that project. It's great. I think it could go really well, but the only way I can do it is if there's enough money in the budget for me to have a grad assistant.
I think that point too, to David, I think it happens a lot to us in AgCom that they think we'll work for free when none of them work for free. And I don't know if I'm the only one. I really admire Courtney usually in this area and Gaia for being very upfront with what they need. And there are literally times in my life where I'm like, what would Courtney say right now? Because I tend to cushion my wants and needs. But I find most people, particularly if you're working with partners in the hard sciences, they're used to people saying what they need and not cushioning it. So saying, I need a grad student if I'm going to do this, or I need, yes, what would Courtney do? Bracelets. We do need those. I've even like literally
Best compliment
recently.
I've had. I'm leaving right now. That's it.
I literally last week, Keisto was texting me if he was appropriate to fill out this grant letter or not. And I sent him back a note and I said, I'll tell you what Courtney Myers told me many years ago. They just need to know that peers support me. So essentially, do you support me or do you not support me? And he was like, you're right. I'll send you the letter. Yeah, that's all I needed. Thank you.
And Lauri, that was excellent point there, because many times I would get asked, we need a website, we need a brochure kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I went, well, the only reason I'm going to be on a grant is so I can publish from it.
Yep.
So either you're providing me some funds for doing research in my research program, or you can contact someone else to do your brochure.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And some of that's just education. They don't know what we do. So when you tell them what we do, they often respect that or realize that they need someone in communication services, not someone that has a PhD.
Well, I've been impressed when I am asked to join a team. I usually will say, well, have you all done a logic model? And then their minds will be blown. And all of a sudden you've proven your worth. It is, they don't usually work through it that systematically. And so but then trying to help them see where doing some of the social science research, Dr. Dorfer made a name for himself, doing some of the adoption research with farmers. Like, what are the barriers? What are the benefits? What would help improve the communication efforts? And that was all part of his research agenda. So it is that education piece. It's helping them see that. But yeah, the worst thing to do is to undersell yourself on a grant and then still have to do the work. And then you're kind of stuck in a place where you're like, well, I don't have the resources I need to do the work. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask for what you need, and just be prepared to counter if they come back and they say we need to cut the budget. Just be aware of that. And that's where I would drop my percent time, but keep my grad students. I see some good comments in the chat. Our
Well, not across the board. I have one I love, but maybe two.
I'm aware.
But yeah, they are. And sometimes it's not always the ones you think. Like, there's this artificial intelligence team we've been working on, and there's this one guy that's always arguing my salary down and my time down, and then he'll turn around and be the one to defend it to somebody else. So I think some of it is that I think more in feelings than I do in dollars. And I think some counterparts think more in dollars than they do in feelings. So if you can kind of prove the value associated with you, that they may end up campaigning for you in the end. Ag economists are better than economists. Well, yeah, that's probably true too.
Lauri, I'm curious, how do you budget time to do the writing? Not like the academic output, the extension articles, or because that's where I find I'm sometimes just like, oh, I can't budget the time for that. So
it is the hardest. thing to do. Well, Chris Boone, many years ago, told me that I should have at least one day out of the office. Of course, what is out of the office right now, where you work on writing. But I still do put a day on my calendar that's a writing day. And this semester, because my writing day kept getting scheduled, other things that I couldn't say no to, I've built in an alternate writing day for the weeks where my actual writing day gets taken. I think that's been the most effective for me. The other piece is more just a personal adjustment that I've had to make in the last couple of years, because I used to think I had to have half a day free to write, or I had to at least have a few hours free to write. And I've had to get better at using 15-minute blocks and 20-minute blocks, if that's all that I have. During the pandemic, things have shifted a little because I have kids home in the later afternoon times. I've started getting up and working from 5 to 6:30, which is before I wake them up for school. And it's not ideal, and it does kind of catch up with you after a little while, but nobody else is sending emails at that hour. I mean, sometimes Ricky Tell will get me, but but mostly nobody else is sending emails, nobody's texting you, nobody's calling you. So those hours have allowed me to focus better. But yeah, I think it's still a daily struggle. I mean, the 65% reminder.
Hey, I have a question related to how to approach a teaching and extension appointment. So when I started my teaching and extension appointment, I thought, gosh, how am I going to do extension if I'm not doing research? I figured that out since then. And Cheryl Boyers, my extension mentor, she says I'm the curator of content for my extension programming. So I can just do secondary research for that. And that works great. But I still struggle. I don't have an evaluation background. So when I'm on these projects with people, I end up doing some research anyway, so I can be part of publications that are not only evaluating workshops, but also just the other grant activities. So any tips or advice related to that type of situation? I know that's not a clear question, but do you understand what I'm asking?
Just that you need to still be publishing. Is that your concern? I guess I'm still a little fuzzy.
Yeah, like how to participate, like limiting my research activities when I don't have a research appointment.
I see.
You know, just trying to juggle.
Yeah. You know who's really good at this? I wish she was here today, and I'll try to channel the things that she said, but Lisa Lundy, I've literally heard her tell people, again, she's a better time manager than I am, but I've literally heard her tell people, I have a 10% research appointment, and that is focused on the Ag Safety Center. If it's not related to that project, I'm not going to do additional research in that area. And it works for her, and she's very good at dividing the time associated with it. I mean, in your case, you probably also have grad students that you need to dedicate time when they're doing research. So it's hard to avoid some of those activities, but the more you can kind of push it off onto another project or a grad student or something like that, I feel like that's what I would recommend. But I saw Ricky unmute for a minute. He may have more to contribute.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because my appointment was very similar to yours. I mean, before I became the director here at the Center for Public Issues Education, I was 80% teaching, 20% extension, no formal research appointment. So you still are expected to do all three, even if you don't have a research appointment, as you know. So you build in your research, kind of like what Lauri was saying about Lisa, into current projects, into your teaching. I did a lot more, I guess you can call it teaching related research at the time when I was an 80-20 split. But I also worked very closely with our extension faculty and did my research as part of my extension appointment too. There were still other opportunities to build in other research type projects, but like Lisa, I tried to really keep my research focused on areas that I was currently involved with in teaching or extension. So.
One thing I might add on that is just be hawkish about your departmental document to make sure it is capturing and I find where a lot of documents kind of fall down is they don't capture modern extension delivery. You know, like it needs to have stuff about social media. It needs to have stuff that will capture podcasts. It needs to have things that'll kind of capture some of those outcomes that are not that just traditional extension publishing. And so, you know, advocate for yourself that way too, to make sure it's getting the stuff that, you know, you're working on as outputs.
Yeah, no, that's a great point too, because I was able to, because when you think extension, you think traditionally working with extension agents. But here we were able to broaden that definition of extension to really working with all of our commodity associations around the state. So I work very closely with them. For our ag education faculty, it's working with teachers. So, you know, just make sure that you have a good understanding of when you say extension, what does that mean? And so if you can define it broadly, then you can do a lot more with it than just working solely with extension faculty, extension agents.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? These are great discussion. I look forward to, now that I've made sure that I recorded the entire webinar today, this should be good for people to come back to watch and to reflect on too. Yeah, Shannon?
Yeah, just real quick. Thank you, Lauri, for all of your advice. I feel like I'm brand new into this, and so trying to absorb as much wisdom as possible. I don't have an extension appointment either, but like Dr. Myers, it was one of those pieces where I was hoping to figure out work-life balance. One question that I would be eager to hear from you or from the rest of the crew here is, how do you see this concept of balancing research appointments in a COVID situation playing out down the road? Because this is my first year into this and trying to figure out how to be new, how to do your job, how to build a new program, work with new people, but then it's also in this virtual space. And so do you see that having some long-term implications where, you know, communications realm, we're able to pivot a little easier than some of our bench sciences in some of these contexts, but do you see that having a long-term influence on some of our packets moving forward?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it will be hard for us to decide long term. I mean, in my world, a lot of the things I research are related to online communication. So it's almost like some of our other people who were like, oh, I can't get in the lab and work, like that wasn't a problem. And it was almost like, wow, people want extra from me at the same time as I also have children at home and all of those kinds of things. I do think, and I've heard from a lot of people that probably this work from home, Zoom in to more meetings is something that may continue to evolve and grow. I think in our world, it's refreshing that often we get on meetings and we're all on video. The people that we've had these meetings during COVID for this artificial intelligence grant, you know, there's 40 to 60 people on at a time and they're phones only, and there's some communication challenges for how we can work together and get better in those environments, and email. But I can see, I feel like there have been a lot more online forums for being able to meet people virtually, but I'm not sure if that's because I was already plugged into networks. I certainly feel for you starting out in a COVID world, as far as being able to join other groups and fill in gaps. I think probably asking your department chair for help, other contacts that you have. Did you do your undergrad there too? I'm sorry, I don't know your whole history, Shannon.
I did. And, you know, I'm very fortunate to have some existing relationships here, but I know several colleagues that are, you know, brand new in this phase, or even some of our PhD students who are in their third year at the start of COVID or second year, then they're going to be graduating without having that conference season to make relationships with people, you know, for interviews or down the road. And so I guess more so for some of our students that are kind of getting ready to graduate and then go into a faculty workplace, I'm just eager to see, you know, what structures can be in place, or if we think that it will have a long-term impact.
As you were saying that, well, first of all, I think NACS did a really good job of still getting to see people and interact. I mean, it wasn't perfect conference season world, but I think if that's a version we're learning and growing as far as being able to introduce. AAAD did a good job too, I think, of introducing students and that sort of thing. But I think people are also more open now to meet via Zoom. I mean, I can't tell you the number of prospective students and that I've met with via Zoom that I don't think 3 years ago, if they couldn't make a campus visit, I don't think many of them would have set up those Zoom sessions. So I think for students, just encouraging them to reach out to faculty and set those up, because we have the technology and people are open to doing that now.
Yeah, and Shannon, your point about, I am also a little concerned about our second, third year PhD students who haven't had an opportunity to conference. And at AAAE, we are going to try to do, the planners are aware of that and want to do more of like a job fair kind of virtual something, so that faculty can get to know some of these PhD students who will potentially be on the job market soon. And I think, you know, I do hope you'll find some reassurance that your first year should be weird, right? Anywhere. Yours is just a little weirder than any of us hoped it would be. So don't put too much pressure on yourself to have everything figured out in your first year on the job. And we all are hoping and praying that this COVID situation will be behind us soon enough. And then you can really get some traction and going in the direction you want to go with your research and teaching and outreach.
Wonderful. Thank you.
There was an article, it was either, and I was trying to find it right now, I can't find it, but it was either, I think it was like the Chronicle or Inside Higher Ed that was on that kind of topic about networking, particularly for graduate students. But, you know, it's COVID time. I have no idea what time when it came out. It was sometime during the pandemic. That's the only bracketing I can put on there.
Great discussion. Any other questions or comments? We're getting close to time. I don't want to cut it off. I think that your point is well taken, Shannon, about, but I would agree, I would echo what Courtney said too. So don't stress right now, because everyone else is in the same boat too. And so it'll be a different, kind of maybe a little bit different for those who are going through the tenure promotion process the next few years. And I think people are going to remember what 2020 and 2021 was like too. So don't worry. Real quick, I think that kind of wraps up for today. I want to thank Lauri and others who've made comments today. I do have a couple of quick announcements. One is, I kind of alluded to this at the very beginning, is that Taylor Ruth, Lisa Lundy, and I are trying to pull information out of these webinars that we're then providing kind of as questions, some of the major points that we are then providing to those of us who are in the mentor-mentee program, because one of the things that we've heard from several of especially the mentees, is helping to kind of start those conversations between your mentor and your mentee. So if nothing else, it gives you some baseline questions to ask of each other about. We used last month's session that Chris actually facilitated the discussions with others there at Ohio State with. And so please feel free to use those to begin the conversations with your mentor or mentee. And we'll do the same thing with our presentation today. Also, I just got an email from Joy Rumble, and that the Journal of Applied Communications editorial board is seeking nominations for a new board member. And so I'll send this request out to the group here when I get back to my office in just a second. If there's nothing else, I do want to remind folks that we will have another session next month, March 22nd. Kara Lawson will be talking about advice for future ag communication journalists. And then we end the year on April the 26th with David Dorford and others to talk about thinking like a futurist. This really is a follow-up from the November webinar, which we're looking at trying to help with the future of the Society of Agricultural Communications Scholars. So we will send information to you from time to time throughout the month. If you ever have any questions, feel free to send them to me. I'll send them out to everybody out there as well. And just glad that everyone is Doing well. It's been kind of a crazy, not only COVID time, but also weather related time. Good to see those of you who are affected by snow and ice, at least somewhat in a normal situation today as well. So thank you all very much. We will talk to you again next month. See you. Bye.